Hey guys, in today's video we're going to be talking about reversing gray hair. Bryan Johnson put out yet another video, this time detailing not only his hair regrowth journey, but also what he's doing to reverse his gray hair. I'm going to be reacting to this and we're going to be talking about why our hair turns gray and how to stop it.
We've gone through the basics. Let me show you what I'm doing for gray hair reversal. Let's go. As I mentioned before, I started going gray when I was in my late 20s. Right here initially, it was kind of a crazy time in my life. I was building Braintree Venmo, I had 3 little babies, I was in a challenging relationship, trying to leave my born into religion, a lot going on. Also, I was really depressed. And so I started going gray. By my mid to late 30s, I was basically all gray.
All gray? I don't know. I see a little graying in the temples, but maybe he was dyeing his hair back then. All right, so graying of the hair. It is a normal part of the aging process. Hair color is secondary to pigment produced by cells called melanocytes that reside down in the hair bulb. There are 2 types of melanin pigments. You have brown-black eumelanin and you have this reddish yellow pheomelanin. And basically your hair color largely is due to the relative amounts and ratios of these 2 pigments. It's pretty common to start seeing gray hairs in your 30s. The general running estimate is that 50% of the population will have 50% or more of their hair gray by the age of 50. There's premature graying of the hair, which is defined as going gray before the age of 20 or 30, depending on your race. The pigmentary unit for coloring your hair is this pigmented, dark black, pear-shaped structure at the tip of the dermal papilla of the hair follicle. But when you start going gray, and a gray hair, that pigmentary unit, it starts to become fuzzy, and you see a decrease in the number of melanocytes, the number of pigment-producing cells, as well as an overall reduction in their transfer of pigment to the surrounding cells. Now we'll get into some of the reasons behind what causes the hair to turn gray. Again, it's part of the normal aging process, and in your 30s, it is not uncommon to start seeing a few gray hairs here and there. But definitely lifestyle factors likely play a huge role, and a lot of people report new onset graying of the hair or increase in the number of gray hairs with a stressful event. I mean, that's a common joke, right? Like, oh my gosh, I can feel the gray hairs coming out. So with certain underlying illnesses, anything that puts stress on the body, causes a lot of inflammation, can be very taxing to those pigment producing cells. Here's the thing, when it comes to making pigment, it's actually a very oxidative process. And when you have an imbalance of the production of reactive oxygen species versus removal of them and handling of them, you get what's called oxidative stress. That can be very taxing on the surrounding structures. It can be very damaging, and it can weaken those pigment producing melanocytes that are responsible for coloring your hair. And as you can imagine, they are vulnerable to a lot of oxidative stress. And that is one of the main factors thought to play a role in why the hair goes gray. It's just cumulative reactive oxygen species, oxidative stress, weakening those melanocytes and compromising their ability to produce pigment, and then ultimately, destroying them. Can you truly reverse gray hair? It's possible, for sure, depending on if there is an underlying cause that has tipped you over the edge. As it stands now, the way the science is going, it really does appear as though there is a window of opportunity where those melanocytes are still salvageable and you can potentially reverse, meaning if you intervene early and address a potential root cause. And again, we'll explain what those might be in a moment. If you do something early enough, you potentially can reverse and slow down the graying process. Now, I want to make it clear, in my opinion, there's absolutely nothing wrong with gray hair, provided it's not related to an underlying medical problem. But we all know Bryan Johnson is on this journey to never die, apparently, and that includes reversing any type of evidence of aging, including graying of the hair. So he's just testing out a variety of things to see what works.
And so with Blueprint, we have been trying to reverse it, and we've tried a lot of things. The first year of this effort, we were largely unsuccessful. Over the past year, we've been successful. Now, many people have said, I dye my hair. I actually don't.
What?
Going to the salon, using a chemical process. I did that before in my 30s. I haven't done that for the past year or so. So I'm going to show you the 2 formulations I use. One of them has an herbal extract, which has a color, and that's what you see in my hair. But what's compelling to me again is
Did you hear the way that was worded? If you just glazed over it, you probably are like, oh, he doesn't dye his hair. No, he doesn't dye his hair in a hair salon. So apparently one of the things that he uses has some colorant in it.
But what's compelling to me again is we biopsied my hair, we looked at it under the microscope, and we see that the color is being produced beneath the scalp. So it's actually working.
He's not showing the scalp biopsy here, but you can imagine, depending on where you sample, it's very easy to sample one part where you've got gray hairs and another part where you don't. So we don't know the details of what he was biopsying. I wouldn't necessarily use a scalp biopsy as proof that it is working per se.
So let me show you the two things we use. One is GR7. This is a company in the UK that makes this. This is applied, I do this 3 or 4 times a week. In addition to GR7 is my Rocky. This is the one that has the herbal extract that has some color as part of the formulation. I use these in tandem. So I apply the GR7 a few times a week, this maybe once or twice a week. And again, if you look at my follicles underneath the microscope, I've increased the production of color in my hair. So we like where it's going. Gray hair reversal is very hard. It takes a lot of effort, just like maintaining your hair when you're going bald.
All right, let's see what these things are. So here is the GR7 No More Gray Hair. GR7 Professional is a revolutionary anti-gray hair treatment. It stops the processing of gray in a natural way by stimulating melanin in hair follicles. Thanks to its unique combination of ingredients, GR7 Professional is the most effective solution to gray hair. Regain your natural hair color with GR7 Professional. What is in this magic lotion? Water, isopropyl alcohol, which can be drying, but probably helps with absorption and penetration, which can really be an issue with any kind of topical for the hair. Glycerin, hydrating, biotin applied to the scalp, probably not going to do much. It's a B vitamin. You know, biotin's really important for hair growth, but to what extent putting it on your scalp is going to do anything for gray hair, yeah, there's no research there. Aluminum chloride, inositol, ammonium acetate. Gallic acid is anti-inflammatory, as is sulfur. Horsetail extract, also anti-inflammatory. Burdock root extract. Tyrosine is an amino acid, important for pigment production. So I suppose in theory, you know, technically, I suppose it could feed the melanocytes, but come on, that is a stretch. Getting stuff down into the hair follicle is a, you know, formulation challenge for sure. I'm highly skeptical that this is going to do anything. Myrocky Anti-Gray Restoring Treatment, gray hair treatment to reverse gray hair, improve gray hair texture, restore color naturally. You know, that is something with gray hair. It does assume a different texture. It's less manageable, it's not as soft. As hair regrows, Myraki's patented active ingredient boosts melanin production at the bulb and stimulates natural pigmentation. The hair is then repigmented and restored to its natural color. It's safe for all hair types and contains nourishing ingredients that make the hair look and feel younger, shinier, and fuller. Water, hydroxycellulose, glycerin, propylene glycol to help enhance penetration, fragrance, coffee extract may be anti-inflammatory, Gala Royce Galnut. That may be the dye, I'm not sure. I don't see anything on here that strikes me as like a dye. Hydrolyzed wheat protein can definitely help with brittle hair strands just by kind of basically filling in little gaps, if you will, and you know, kind of strengthening, but it's a very temporary effect. So again, this has a variety of botanic extracts, maybe anti-inflammatory. It may provide antioxidants to the scalp and, you know, in theory could do this, but I'm very skeptical. I'm kind of intrigued that he has decided to use these two things. I don't really think they're doing much, if I'm being honest. It's hard to judge if he's truly had reversal of gray hair because he was dyeing his hair before, allegedly. So we don't really have a good sense. And he's dyeing his hair currently, although not in a professional setting. So there's that. So it's just kind of hard to assess to what extent he's truly had reversal of gray hair here. So like I said, a lot of why our hair goes gray in the first place, why we start losing color, has to do likely with cumulative oxidative stress over time. So anything that creates excessive free radicals in the body, excessive oxidative stress is very inflammatory, can push things over the edge. Classic example, like probably the most well-established link just based on association. And again, association does not prove causation, is people who smoke. People who smoke are more likely to go gray earlier because they are bolusing themselves daily with an excess load of oxidative stress. And they also deplete their body's antioxidant reservoirs. That's why they have prominent signs of skin aging prematurely, and that's why they age their follicles rapidly and the rest of their body, and set the stage for numerous cancers. So the number one thing that you can do to prevent, to reverse, to slow down graying of the hair, if you're motivated, don't smoke. The other thing is your nutritional status. We know that people who have B12 deficiency, one of the signs of B12 deficiency is graying of the hair, new onset graying of the hair. There is an autoimmune condition called pernicious anemia. Basically, your immune system attacks the substances that are needed to absorb B12, so you can't absorb it in your diet. You become B12 deficient. Those patients often have premature graying of the hair. Check out my video on signs of B12 deficiency. That's one of them, along with pigmentation of the palms. And that's important because B12 deficiency is nothing to joke around with. It can be, it can go, if it persists, you can have severe irreparable neurologic damage. So it could be an important clue that your B12 is low, or maybe you have an inflammatory bowel disease like Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. The inflammation in the gut can get in the way of B12 absorption. If caught early and treated, not only is that key for your overall health and longevity for sure, but it's possible that the gray hair reverses. Then there is also thyroid disease, okay? That's the other thing. Thyroid hormone, T3, T4, really important actually in the production of pigment from those melanocytes that color the hair. Patients who have hypothyroidism, low thyroid, their hair can start going gray. Check out my video on skin signs of hypothyroidism. So for some patients who come in and they have new onset graying of the hair, it might be worthwhile, depending on their medical and family history, to check their B12, to check their thyroid, because those are things that can be life-threatening if they go undetected and untreated. And if detected and treated early, they can also potentially reverse the graying of the hair. As I said, there seems to be a window of time when caught early on, these interventions are most likely to be helpful. It's a broad category though. It's already part of the natural aging process, but if you have overlying factors on top of it that are really pushing it for you and you intervene on those early enough, then yes, it can make a difference. Then you have patients with vitiligo. Vitiligo is an autoimmune attack on the pigment producing cells, and those patients, their melanocytes are a lot more susceptible to oxidative stress and to damage from oxidative stress. So for those patients, it's not uncommon for them to go gray earlier or to start going gray, especially when their vitiligo is very active. So there are no promises that you can reverse your graying of the hair. Some people have a genetic tendency to go gray early. If you have family members who went gray before the age of 20 or 30, there's a good chance that you will too. More research is needed to identify the genetics behind why people go gray early, but it appears to be inherited in what's called an autosomal dominant fashion, meaning you only need one copy of whatever it is to develop premature graying of the hair, as opposed to getting two copies from, one copy from each parent. You only need one copy of the memo, and boom, there you go. It appears to be that way, but more research is needed. And if you have a genetic tendency to going gray early, that's just who you are. There's not much you can do other than make sure you have a healthy lifestyle and you don't smoke. But that goes for anyone. Anybody out there who is thinking of smoking, don't do it. Not it. The other thing that can definitely impact the pigment production of the hair are medications. Specifically, certain medications given to treat certain cancers, chemotherapy. Some of these chemotherapeutics work by inhibiting a receptor that is necessary for production of pigment. Also, there's a class of medications called anti-malarials, well, of course, used to treat malaria, but also used to treat things like lupus. And these can impact hair color. Chloroquine, for example, can reduce the pigment pheomelanin, have a change in the hair color as a result. It appears clear that people who go through any type of profound nutritional deficiency, they definitely can start having graying of the hair, because again, the melanocytes are taxed, and that stress, that burden on the body, it's too much, and they kind of are like, okay, we're done here, and that's it. For example, patients who become what's called have protein energy malnutrition, severe malnutrition, definitely can start having graying of the hair. Copper deficiency, not very common, but I will warn you, if you take excessive amounts of zinc supplements, it is possible that it can interfere with the absorption of copper, lower your copper levels, and that might impact your hair color. There's some association with iron deficiency, with vitamin D deficiency, calcium deficiency, as well as a low ferritin. Ferritin's a marker of iron levels, and having graying of the hair, but that really hasn't been confirmed. Small studies here and there suggesting an association. To what extent, though, would it ever, we'd need more research to say, hey, anybody who's starting to go gray, we should check these labs, make sure they're not deficient in these things. But we don't really have enough research to point in that direction. But also, there's a small amount of research, very small, suggesting an association with graying of the hair and low HDL. That's a good cholesterol that you want on the high, the HDL you want high. So those are some things that for some patients could be investigated if the history supports it. Not everyone who has a few gray hairs popping up needs to undergo an extensive blood workup. That's a waste of money. Most people are going to have gray as part of normal aging. Shouldn't be anything that we go unnecessarily testing for. So he seems to believe that these two topicals are what is making a huge difference in his gray hair. It's really hard to say. I'm highly skeptical of these. Are there any topicals out there that have been studied for improving gray hair? There are studies looking at topical antioxidants, for example, green tea polyphenols and melatonin applied to the scalp show promise. Small studies here and there, not enough to really say, oh yeah, go buy this and put it on your scalp and it'll reverse your gray hair. So you have to be careful with stuff like this. He seems to think they're working, but again, it's hard to judge to what extent he truly has had reversal of any graying of the hair. You do have to be careful with things like this because there's nothing out there that is approved or established to reverse gray hair. And it's something that bothers a lot of people cosmetically. Don't fall prey to those kinds of things. I mean, if you want to try something like this, it appears to be relatively harmless. The greatest risk of doing something like this, using one of these two things he's talking about here, is contact dermatitis. But you can develop contact dermatitis from anything you put on your scalp. So just be aware of that. You may just be wasting your money. The other topical that theoretically could work, depending again on if caught early, not really used widely, are the topical prostaglandin analogs. You hear about Latisse, Bimatoprost, used for lash enhancement. And I've got videos on this channel talking about Latisse and how it works. Well, one of the side effects of Latisse is hyperpigmentation of the skin around the eyes. That's why a lot of people end up stopping it. One of the many potential side effects, I should say. But that side effect actually can be, exploited to our advantage in certain situations. And it turns out that latanoprost, similar compound, one person seemed to get improvement in gray hair with topical latanoprost. So that's an area where, it makes sense. Clearly it gets to the follicle in some meaningful way because it can be helpful for growing brow hair. Why he chose these products with these specific ingredients, I couldn't find anything on any of these ingredients before I sat down to film this video that are in these products. All that to say, can you reverse gray hair? You can. The devil is in the details. It depends on if there is a factor that is driving it excessively above and beyond what is normal aging. If caught early enough, and also dependent on your background genetics and background genetic makeup. Some people are just going to be more vulnerable to going gray early. And in my opinion, nothing wrong with gray hair. Perfectly normal part of aging. And in fact, I think a lot of people look really, really good with gray hair. All right, y'all. So that's what I wanted to talk about in today's video. Let me know if you want me to react to the rest of this video where he goes into detail about how he reversed his hair loss. Because that is, I've got a lot of videos on this channel about hair loss and hair loss treatments that actually work. But I have reacted to a couple of his videos now about the different treatments that he is doing and pursuing. As a matter of fact, on the end slate, I will put my last Bryan Johnson reaction video. So those of you who are interested in that, check it out. But if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends. And as always, don't forget, sunscreen and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.